know.
This up here. Welcome back. Thank you for checking out another edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle, and man, we got a special one here, man. We've been waiting to do this one for a while. If you've been following the podcast, you know that I am a huge fan of the late great Tupac Shakur. Had several podcasts talking about Tupac and talking about Biggie, broken down Tupac's albums. Talked about the classic albums that I think Tupac has produced, and just have, had several conversations about Tupac. And if you follow the podcast, you know that the last time that I talked about Tupac, we did a breakdown of the Machiavelli Don Columinati album, which I think at the time it turned 20 or 25 years. I can't remember. But anyway, I had my man Q, the sixth man, on, and we chopped it up in detail about that album. And I got the idea to talk about just my thoughts and our thoughts on, what things would be like if Tupac were still alive. So what I did was I reached out to Q and I reached out to my man Manny, and I just simply sent them a text. I sent Q a text, and the text said, hey, come up with 10 things that you think, would have happened if Tupac were still alive. And then I sent Manny a text and said, hey, come up with 10 things that you think that would have happened if Biggie were still alive. And as a result, that is what this podcast is. So what this podcast is. So without further ado, I'm bringing my man back on, Q the six man. Q, what up, man?
Yo. What's good, man? Great to be back. We here to discuss, our, my GOAT,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's yours, but for sure, man, this is definitely a long time coming. I feel like we just always meld with the minds when it comes to Pac, man. There's a certain energy that happens. So I'm very excited for this.
Oh no, man, no doubt. And as I mentioned to you guys before, Q is much, much younger than me. I just turned 50. Q just turned 26. So if you do the math, Q was in essence a baby when Pac was alive, when he was last alive. So yeah. So do you remember me sending the text? And do you still have that text?
I do.
Okay, cool. So you can read the text or whatever, however you want to do it. But I just, and we sat on this because I wanted to wait before I did both of the podcasts, because Manny and I recorded the podcast already. And I said, well, you know what? I'm not going to release that podcast until I get Q on and the scheduling thing. And I told you, and just like I told you, I said, man, don't worry about it. I said, we'll do it whenever we can. And so now we're here to do it, man. Before we even jump into that, man, Tupac, when you think of Pac, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when somebody mentions Tupac Shakur?
For me, as a person who's been a community organizer and a person who has traveled the country teaching about Black and African history, Tupac Shakur is the last vestige of the Black Power movement within mainstream media in America. And the last actual mainstream pop culture figure who has a real through line connection to the Black Power movement, African liberation, all of that. So, and then on top of that, he just happens to be the most prolific, iconographer, when it comes to the tattoos, or comes to the bandanas, or comes to the thug life, or just the bombastic nature of his interviews, or the repetition of just continuing to put out work after work, the impact of what he's done with artists and their output of songs. Everyone does 1,000 songs a day now. That was unheard of when he was doing it, so
Facts.
Just the most iconic, maybe not the best lyricist to everybody, maybe not the most thorough lyricist, but that's what I think of.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think you're right. He wasn't the best lyricist. I don't think anybody would confuse that, but Tupac rapped with such passion. I tell people all the time, like, I think he's the most impactful rapper ever. And I don't think that there's even a close second.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and his, you know, untimely death is still being felt throughout hip hop. And then if you take a Tupac, if you take Tupac and make him a tree, there's so many branches that extend off of that Tupac
Mm-hmm.
tree, and that you can see even to today in today's hip hop. Um, and so, like I said, I came up with the idea of if Tupac were still alive. And what's funny was I said both you and Manny in the text, like I said, you for Tupac, Manny for Biggie.
Mm-hmm.
And Manny was like, "All right, bet I got you. Just let me know when you want to record." You, on the other hand, wrote 10 things out in the text
Mm-hmm.
message. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "No, Q, no, 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 no." I was like, "No, just save it for the podcast." So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it, man.
I
And they don't
mean,
have to be in any particular order. What's one thing that you think
mm-hmm.
uh would be happening if Tupac were still alive today?
In 2022, because I wanted to like kind of revise it a little bit, so
Okay.
I went back and did for this year, and then if you wanted to just do immediately, like maybe 96, 97.
However, it's your show, bro. You got 10, so I'm here for all of
Let's
them.
do it. I'm thinking let's start with if Vegas did not happen.
Okay.
Um, Nas was supposed to go to Vegas and
Mm,
shoot the video for Street Dreams,
yes.
and I believe Pac told Suge he wanted to do an album with Nas.
Mm,
I think they would have did an album. I think they would have squashed it, and I think that that would have set the entire tone for the next 15 years of what hip hop's lyrics and what the actual imagery should have been. If you look at where Nas was going with it was written, if you look at
mm-hmm,
where Pac was going with Machiavelli, towards the end of his life, he was making music that was much more spiritual, much more like grounded in like being human music. You know, he even
mm-hmm.
used that type of terminology. I think of like "If I Ruled the World" from
Yes.
Nas, and like all of these type of symbols and all of this type of content coming together on the same side, squashing the beef in Bryant Park.
Mm-hmm,
I think that we turn away from the puff, hove, money, cash, hoes, ain't it money, you know what I mean? All that stuff
mm-hmm.
that kind of falls by the wayside. And then the two conscious brothers, the more like, liberation minded brothers, I believe that they become the two. And I do think it's a deliberate thing that Nas was made to become a joke by places like Vibe magazine and giving him, putting him in shiny suits and all that stuff. They kind
Mm,
of, turned him into a little bit of what he was fighting against, or at least, started out being against. And then Pac just, being murdered completely shook the entire landscape. So
it did.
if they were able to squash beef, that would have been, I think they would have dropped an incredible album.
Man, that just the idea of that makes me it makes me smile, man. I mean, I agree 1,000%. We know that Nas and Pac met up, prior to Pac being murdered, and we know that whatever beef that they had was squashed at that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I could definitely see that happening. I could
Mm-hmm.
definitely see that happening. And a Nas and Tupac album, bruh.
Man, listen. I don't even know who I want on that production. Like, I need everybody. Primo, Mo B, like everybody got Daz. I don't know. Somebody. It needs to be everybody on that. Like,
Everybody, yeah, definitely Daz, definitely
yeah,
Daz.
need that.
What about number two? What you got for me, number two? If Pac were still alive,
Pac was still alive. Pac would be, I believe, where we hold Will Smith at
mm,
in terms of acting, in terms of film, in terms of just being a true thespian. People don't understand. Tupac actually, when he was about 11 or 10 years old, he rewrote a Shakespearean sonnet in plain English.
mm,
He rewrote it because he went to performing art school, the Baltimore school and everything with Jada and whatnot.
mhm,
Pac was a prodigy, and that's where he actually learned about Machiavelli at. And that's where he became Machiavelli. It wasn't just some newfound thing that he became towards the end of his life. He had always been really into the idea of the prince and Machiavelli. So if he were able to live, I know for a fact that there are scripts that Pac had to come across his desk for Mace Windu in Star Wars. That was a
mhm.
role for Pac.
Wow.
Baby Boy, that was a role for Pac. And then there was two more that I'm forgetting, but he had multiple roles that were given to other people. Even Fast and Furious was in like the scripts were in circulation for years before the 2000s,
Mhm.
and these roles were all for Tupac in mind. So him becoming, with Gridlocked and Gang Related, all of those films, 97, 98, 99, I could have seen him becoming an EGOT by 2005 probably.
Mm.
He could have won a Tony, could have got an Oscar, could have did some on TV. This man was multi-talented, so I definitely see his acting chops becoming greater.
That's crazy. And you know what? You just made me think about something. Did Pac ever win a Grammy? I don't know that he did. Did
No,
he?
no, he did not. Nope.
It's
Nope.
crazy, right?
I mean, it took. It took Nas until what? King's Disease 2.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. I forgot who I'm talking about. I'm talking
You
about the
know.
Grammys here. That's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily the standard for hip hop. But when you said EGOT, I just immediately thought about a Grammy.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you. I think I was very impressed with Pac. One, I loved him in Above the Rim.
Mm-hmm.
But when he got and obviously Juice, but when he got out of the quote unquote stereotype acting, and even in Poetic Justice,
Mm-hmm.
you got a chance to see him outside of just being the rapper slash tough guy, whatever the case may be, man.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely could have seen that. I think that's, and to be honest, when Pac was murdered,
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the founding sentiments that people really thought that his career, as crazy as it sounds, because keep in mind, folks who weren't around in 96 when he was murdered, Tupac was the biggest rap star, period.
Mm-hmm.
Jay-Z was out, but he wasn't, known like that. Um, Pac was bigger than Biggie at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and or just as big, if you will. But it would be the equivalent of in 2022, 2023, Drake being murdered.
Mm-hmm.
The equivalent. So just think about it like that on that. If God forbid, knock wood, somebody
Mm-hmm.
murdered Drake today as you're
Mm-hmm.
listening to this podcast. So having that type of talent taken away, and again, the sentiment from a lot of people, particularly those who memorialized him in his death, a lot of people spoke of his acting chops and where they thought he was headed. So I definitely agree with you on that one. What you got for me next?
But I mean, let's stick to it, man. Like, even on Machiavelli when he's going at Hove, I don't think Jay-Z's career is the exact same. You too small to
Oh, Q,
fuck
you
with
better
me.
step, you better step on some toes,
You
Q.
too small to fuck with me. You and little Hawaiian Sophie fame niggas. Like, yo, bro, come on. It's Pac. Like, understand. Like, what you just said is so true. Where people don't understand. He's the biggest star on the face of the planet. Like, this dude, Tupac, has murals. He has streets named after him from Palestine to Germany,
Mm.
from Angola to Marrakech. It does not. People like stop talking to me about H to the Izzo. Don't talk to me about God's plan with Drake. Don't talk to me about all these other. I love hip hop and I love the contributions.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking about people who moved the spirit of our people, there's only a couple of rappers who do that.
Talk to him.
You know what I mean? There are rappers that can make your body move and dance and girls dance and whatnot. Pac could do that too. And that's why it's so hard for me to look at it when people say, oh, well, Jay would have been him if Pac was still here, because they're just too diametrically opposed in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
I think, their politics. I think they're diametrically opposed in what they do it for.
Right.
And I think that Pac had a much greater ear at the time. He had the masses ear. And Hov, like, how many copies, you already know? How many copies did Reasonable Doubt sell first week? Compared
Like
to like
60 something,
come,
60,000 maybe,
come
if
on,
that.
man, come on. And it's like compared to what 6 million records in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Pac got out of jail in 95 November. He was dead in September of 96, and that is the run that people talk
Man,
about.
listen. And I think we talked about it when we did the Machiavelli review. That's the thing that's mind-boggling, even for me, someone who was alive and I was in college at the time. Like from Pac making his debut on Digital Underground's same song to the time that he was killed in September of 1996, that wasn't a big window. I mean, relatively speaking, we're talking about maybe 3.5, almost 4 years, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
if my math is correct.
Mm-hmm.
Relatively speaking, it wasn't a big window and it wasn't a big period of time. But when I tell you he was a star among stars, like it's really hard for me to put into words like how big he was in a short period of time. And I'll be honest, Q, that time frame seemed a lot longer than what it really was. If you told
Mm-hmm.
me, okay, yeah, Pac's reign was only 4 years, he was only in that spotlight for 4 years, I'd have told you it was crazy because it seemed like it was 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we hung on every word of every song. We saw all the movies. We bought all the tapes. I bought Thug Life. And I'll be honest, that Thug Life album really wasn't that good, but I bought it on the strength of Pac. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are his boys. I mean, the Outlaws albums, you bought because of the affiliation to him. And I thought they were okay. They weren't, they weren't great MCs or anything like that, but they
Mm-hmm.
were his boys and he put them on.
Mm-hmm.
To your point about Jay-Z, I agree. I think, and it's funny because, and the folks will hear Manny's episode after this episode. Manny said something similar. Uh, I think I think Jay-Z definitely, through no fault of his own,
Mm-hmm.
benefited from Biggie's death and Pac's death. I mean, it is what it is. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Jay-Z happened to collaborate with Biggie and he was friends with Biggie. But, Reasonable Doubt comes out June of 96. Pac gets murdered September of 96.
Mm-hmm.
Biggie gets murdered March of 97.
Mm-hmm.
Jay-Z starts subsequently working on the second album.
Mm-hmm.
And by quote unquote industry standards, based on Jay-Z's talent, Reasonable Doubt did not sell based on Jay-Z's talent. If you told me that you had this super duper, crazy MC with all of this talent, one of the best MCs we've ever seen, and his album sells less than 100,000 in a year time, then, in most situations, I'll put it like this, Q. If Jay-Z wasn't a Rockefeller, if he was on a regular record label, he might have gotten dropped. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? So I said all that to say this. There's definitely some I can't say that you're wrong. And just like I told Manny, I couldn't say that he was wrong either to say that Jay-Z benefited from, their deaths. And again, through no fault of his own, but
Mm-hmm.
we're just being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the time frame and you look at the timeline, he clearly did. He was able to fill a void that was
Mm-hmm.
no longer there by the presence of Pac and Biggie. And Pac more so than Biggie because at least he was cool with Biggie.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know that he had beef with Pac, but we know Pac ain't like him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What you got for me at 4?
I think that he would have squashed the beef with Biggie at a certain point. I don't know if it would have happened in the 90s. I'm pretty sure that around 96, if you listen to Against All Odds, he was really going at Jimmy Henchman, really going at Haitian Jack and Puff. It kind of went away. He kind of went away from Biggie because I think he realized that Biggie was just kind of a, for lack of a better terms, God bless the dead, like clueless in the whole like situation. But when he tells Puff, you and I know what's going on, I think he understands exactly like who his enemies were. You know what I mean? So it might have been damn near 2020 before they squashed the beef, but like it's
that
fine.
long?
You know what I mean? I can just see Biggie like, man, you can't just say you did this to my girl and think that's gonna be cool in 1999,
Yeah,
bro. Nah, bro. I could see that. This hopefully in the afterlife, these brothers are squashed and realize that they were
I
just
think
so
they have.
young. Mm-hmm.
And again, you're right. They both were, 24, 25, like
Kids.
And here's the crazy thing is, Q, like they weren't that much older than me. I mean, I think they might have been older than me by like a year. So, if Biggie and Pac were still alive, they would literally be 50, 51 years old. And thinking about how they would have been, but man, that would have been dope. I'll take a little bit from you. I think if Pac and Big had lived, I think they probably would have squashed the beef probably sooner than that. The whole faith thing, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that anybody knows. I think the only thing that I know is that Faith did go record a song, and there was someone there that took a picture of them together.
Mm-hmm.
And this is before social media, so we don't know. I mean, it wasn't like Pocket sent out a tweet saying, "Yo, I'm about to go knock this down."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think even at best, she was somewhere in a studio in LA or somewhere with Pac, and Pac just kind of made it look like, okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
let them believe what they want to believe, and then he
Mm-hmm.
kind of threw it out there. But even in doing that, you're playing as a man, you're playing a dangerous game.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, man, I agree with you. I think they would have eventually stopped beefing, and I think they because they for what we know, Pac and Big were friends, like
Mm-hmm.
not just people that know each other, like they were friends.
Mm-hmm.
I would go out on a limb and say I think Pac and Biggie were more friends than than Big and Jay-Z were, based on what we know. And we don't
Mm-hmm.
know a lot. And it's not a lot that's documented about it, but just a little of we know from those who told the stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. What you got at 5?
He would have left Death Row.
Woo.
He would have left Death Row. He would have left Death Row. We would have started Machiavelli Records. He was already doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And number one, that's why I think he was killed. I do not believe. And if people want to corroborate information, I brought this book up in the last episode we
Mm-hmm.
did,
Mm-hmm.
but it is called "The FBI War on Tupac Shakur" by John Potash. You know what I mean? And it's a very short read with court documents, with actual FBI files. Tupac has an FBI file that you can look at on
Yes.
Google. It's
Yes.
it's under the Freedom of Information Act,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just way too many missing pieces, way too many fishy details. So there's a lot of money he was owed. He was owed about $60 million from his contract in Death Row, and he was only getting about $3 million. Plus, Pac was under a lot of repression from the court system, so he had to pay a lot of fees. And it's always so funny how we get these, in my opinion, counterinsurgent narratives about Tupac. If they just
Okay.
want to paint him to be like he was just this violent, wannabe, misguided gangbanging thug who got caught up in the wrong situation because he was so rage driven.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't see that narrative at all. I see somebody who could not leave the state without court permission.
Yes.
I see somebody who was in the studio 24/7 making all these songs, going from the studio to movie sets and back, but yet and still there's this narrative that Tupac was running around LA with Bloods and Crips just doing whatever he wanted to do.
Right.
How I don't know how a man can have that much time in the day to go record 500 songs, then go record three movies,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and then go to court and then be a gangbanger and wannabe like that. It's all a narrative, in my opinion. And
Mm-hmm.
when you look at where his money was going, I don't think Suge had much control over Death Row because Suge was not the true owner of Death Row. That was Harry O, and that was David Kenner, the
David Kenner.
lawyer.
Yeah. Yep. David
They
Kenner.
own Death Row.
Mm-hmm.
Suge was like Puff. He's just he's just the
Figurehead.
face. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. He's the figurehead. He's like a president, a real president, actually. And when you see that Pac was suing for his money, and he fires David Kenner, and then a couple of days later, David Kenner says you shouldn't do this, and a couple of days later after that, he's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody in his security team has their walkie-talkies on him. The head of Death Row Security says, "Don't carry your guns in Vegas." It just a lot of it is fishy, and a lot of it does not make any sense. And if you understand economics, if you understand the Michael Jackson theory, the Prince theory, they will come get you if you try to get your money. And I do believe that he was trying to leave Death Row, and he should have left Death Row. And he even told his lawyer at the time, while he was in Clinton Correctional, Watai Taihemba, who was actually in the Black Panthers. He was actually a part of the movement. He told Pac, he said, if you sign with these people, I know you're trying to get out, but you're selling your soul to the devil if you do it. And he's like, I know I have to do this, but this is the only play I got. If I don't, I'm a rot in here.
He damn sure would have.
And that's what he had to do. So, in my opinion, Pac would have left Death Row. He would have got his money. Machiavelli Records was already being started with Afeni Shakur and Yasmin Fula. Yasmin Fula was Yaki Gaddafi's mother. Yaki Gaddafi's father is Sekou Odinga.
Okay.
And Yaki Gaddafi gave a statement to the police saying that Orlando Anderson was not the shooter. And then a couple months later, Yaki is mysteriously killed before he's able to testify. There's so much shit about Tupac Shakur's legacy that is stuffed down behind Vibe magazine bullshit,
bruh,
that people don't even know.
Man, listen, you just said a mouthful right there. I agree with you 1,000%. I definitely think he was leaving death row. If you were around or outside at that particular time, you know that when Suge got Pac out of jail, or let me go back, and the record label got Pac out of jail, Pac, basically committed to I think it was 3 or 4 albums.
3 albums.
Yeah, okay, 3-album deal. And that's why we get all of this posthumous music from Pac, because he was, like Q mentioned a little earlier, he was working so hard. He was doing 5 or 6 songs a day. He basically was trying to work off that debt, because what he wanted to do was put those albums out so that he could indeed break free from death row. So at the time that he was murdered, he was definitely trying to get off death row. It's funny that you mentioned the FBI file that you mentioned when we did the Machiavelli review. Man, I'm gonna be honest, Q. Not long after we did that, I went and looked at that file. Man, I couldn't. I looked at it for about 20 minutes and I had to stop because it hurt.
You're sick.
As a fan, it hurt because in 1996 we don't have access to all of the information that we have now. So I'm getting whatever, and I talked about it on the podcast. It's worth repeating. When Pac got shot, we just knew that he got shot. There was no TMZ, there was no nothing, and he got shot. We didn't know how severe it was. We saw the bullet, we saw the pictures. We eventually saw that, and allegedly Suge had gotten hit, which but he didn't have any type of hospitalization because the word was, oh, Suge got shot in the head, and I think they said it was a bullet fragment, but that came out later. So it was, but he never had to be admitted to the hospital. And then like days later, everything passed and people said, well, oh yeah, he's getting better. And we got rumors that Pac was actually talking to people. I don't know that Pac ever gained consciousness after being shot, but and then that Friday rolls around, Friday, September the 13th. I'll never forget it. And they said he's dead. And I'm like, what do you mean he's dead? Like that can't be, because from the time there was so little information disseminated to us. And maybe, part of it is because of the times, but also because maybe they didn't want us to know. And so, like I said, Q, I started reading that file, man, and I had to stop because it just hurt as a fan, because we felt cheated. We didn't, at that time, you didn't lose your rap heroes. You just didn't. Now, unfortunately, we're in hip hop, we're kind of accustomed to, this one overdosing or that one being murdered. And that's it's sad, but that's where we are, because that's where we are as a society. But you didn't lose. So what I'm saying that to say this, when we heard that Pac got shot, we was like, oh, okay. Because it was like that wasn't the first time we had heard that Pac was ever shot. So we thought he was gonna bounce back. Even Biggie said that. Biggie said, well, hey, I heard he got shot. And I was like, again, like, he's gonna bounce back, do some records about it. And he said that in a joking manner, but I get what he was saying, because like nobody, when we got the news that he was shot, nobody thought he was gonna die. Nobody. Because, and Pac was a strong dude too, first and foremost. Don't get it twisted. But I said all that to say this. I think you're dead on. I don't, there's nothing in me that thinks that Pac was gonna stick around at death row to help Suge do anything. Pac had 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And based on the music that we got after he passed, I think we can all see that, his time on death row was going to be limited, and he was moving on to something else. And, I think the thing that I always talk about when I talk about Pac is feeling cheated. I think that's part of feeling cheated where I come in at, is because wanted to see what that other side would have sounded like. What's the post death row Pac sound like?
Yeah, exactly. You know what? And to build on that before we get to the next one,
Mm-hmm.
it's just I think that same feeling is the same feeling that like 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, or even grown men in Harlem, New York felt 1965 when it's like Malcolm is gone. Wait,
Yeah.
no. This can't be because it's the feeling of this is a living personification of our black manhood right now,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't take this from us right now.
Right.
Like I need this right now. When you have youth who are looking at their big brothers, like when you have people following Malcolm and listening to his speeches,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Pac's cadence when he raps, like I always go back to Shock G when he talks about Biggie, like it's the PIP, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
POP, you know what I mean? It's all about the trumpet of like the trumpeter. He says, like, you know, that's how Biggie flows, you know what I mean? Where
Mm-hmm.
Pac is the orator, you know, Pac is like a Farrakhan, Pac is like a Malcolm, where, you know what I'm saying, penitentiary chances, like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like he's stretching the words and you gotta feel it. And
Mm-hmm. He makes you feel them.
it's in that same genealogy of oration, yo, of like a Malcolm when he's like, "Who taught you to hate yourself?" Right? When it's like when Pac come out and say, "You got to keep your head up," like nigga, what?
Yeah.
Like this is that same feeling. So it's so much deeper than rap for me. I'm not just a Tupac fan. I've taught students about Tupac. I'm a Pac historian. I'm a
Mm.
Shakur historian. Like I know about his whole family tree. It's so deep because it makes him who he is
Mm-hmm.
when he's talking about you when he says utilize lessons learned from my childhood years. He's talking about those lessons that the youth in the 60s were getting.
Mm-hmm.
So when we are robbed of that, bro, that shit hurts forever because we're not
Ever.
getting it back.
Ever. You know, and trust me, they didn't make a lot of Tupacs.
Man, listen,
They did, you know, they don't make a lot of Tupacs.
listen.
That mold was cut and thrown away. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me.
Absolutely.
What you got for number 6?
Probably, you know, I want to paint a picture of people like imagine like probably late 90s, early 2000s. I feel like Pac would have started his own clothing line.
Okay.
I really feel like this, you know, the whole Sean John, Rockaware, like that whole, you know, Fat Farm.
Mm.
Every rapper was getting a clothing line. You mean to tell me Pac, the biggest rapper, wouldn't have had the hottest line? Like he would at least had a do rag or bandana line or something, dude. Everybody
Facts.
would have been rocking it. You know what I mean? Kanye had people wearing them weird sneakers and those weird glasses. So it's like, you know what I mean? And them space boots everybody got on and shit. Come on now.
Man,
So
listen,
definitely,
no knock on those of you who have Yeezys. I never saw the beauty in them, man.
man.
It just and aside from the fact that they cost like $2,000 for some sneakers that
Mm-hmm.
look like they about to fall off your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, you cracked me up with that one. Now
Listen.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think he definitely would have delved into the fashion because at that particular time, like you said, almost everybody was.
Mm-hmm.
Wu-Tang had their clothing line. Biggie actually he started a line called Brooklyn Mint just before he got killed. I had a couple of Brooklyn Mint shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Run DMC had Walkerwear. Almost every and again, folks, what I want you guys to understand is that Pac's last 2 years, 95, 96, this was the thing. Like as you were moving up and you were able to sell to mainstream,
Mm-hmm.
you could keep it street and still sell to mainstream. And Pac was the epitome of that. And given the fact that he was a high visibility superstar, I mean, again, he's not only doing music, but he's also doing movies. That's the thing that Pac had up on a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
because for as popular as Puff was, for as popular as Biggie was, for as popular as Jay-Z was, subsequently, even Nas,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have movie deals. By the
Mm-hmm.
time, and again, if we say Pac's window is, 4 years, look at them. You don't just, you don't go from being a backup dancer to a rapper to a movie star.
Right.
And that happens so fast. So like when people talk about, Tupac and his detractors, I'll put it like that. I always stand on the fact that Pac was doing things on the big screen when nobody else could get on the screen.
Mm.
Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Because even as, if you think about it like this, Q, you mentioned Will Smith a little earlier. Even at
Mm-hmm.
that time, Will Smith had The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Was he was independent? I don't know. I'd have to look it up and see if Independence Day had been. Okay, maybe Will Smith. But outside of Will Smith, there was no other rap star that was that big on a movie screen. Not even Ice Cube.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe Cube might be a close second, but that's but nobody else was touching Pac. But
Mm-hmm.
his contemporaries in Puff and Big, they weren't doing movies. Biggie was on Martin. That's about as far as far as he could go.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm with you. He would have definitely done a clothing line. What you
Definitely.
got for 8?
The community centers, man. He was already he was already on the path to doing it. I think he already had opened one
Mm-hmm.
down in LA, and he was actually going to use Death Row. And I feel like Death Row was a strategic move, like he always told people. It's so funny how we allow, today's like rappers, or we allow like old heads who are not even around Pac to
Mm-hmm.
like say things about him that he clearly states in interviews. And that's why, as a people, we have to get off the anti-intellectualism. We have
Yes.
to stop speaking without investigation, and we have to we should learn to clarify our statements with, I'm unaware if this was said, but in my opinion,
Mm.
that can save a lot. That can
Yes.
save a lot of people embarrassment. I'm not aware if this was said, but I think, okay, cool. Instead of, man, Pac was, stop, dude.
Mm.
Pac opened the community center. He was also going to use that community center to do something for all the kids, where it was a part of the Joshua's Dream program,
Okay.
where one of his fans had died, and he brought him to a basketball game and whatnot. But he talked to MC Hammer and said, yo, I want to use this moment and make something good out of it. I want to do something where the kids around the LA area, we put on Death Row concerts for them or whatnot, all clean lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
We bring food, the parents can come. It's all, we do it at the end of every month at the community centers, and wherever we can rent out space at. And what we're gonna do is, all the kids got to bring their report cards. All they gotta do is make a C plus average, and they can get in for free. The parents, everybody can shake hands. It's all
Mm-hmm.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, a rapper today would be completely either discouraged by their management because, oh, you can't be around black people because that's not good, or they don't like that type of branding of, I'm here for
Right.
my community.
Right. Man, facts.
Mm-hmm.
1,000 facts. Yeah, you're right. I think his involvement with community centers, I think, would have been dope because, one, of his background. He came from, Afeni Shakur,
Mm-hmm.
and who was a Panther.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the lessons that he talked about in that song, and the lessons that he talked about anytime you would interview him, he talked about just a sense of community, and he talked about us. Like, a lot of times you get people that talk about us as a community that really have no identity to the community.
Mm-hmm.
But Pac genuinely wanted to see us as a community, as the black community, come up.
Mm-hmm.
And he was there to identify, the struggles. He was there to identify what went wrong. And he's also there as a beam of light of hope for what he envisioned for us to be. And, not to compare him and Jay-Z, but I mean, like, from that communal standpoint, you knew where Pac stood.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody like Jay-Z, you don't know where he stands.
Mm-hmm.
From that perspective, you don't. And
Mm-hmm.
again, that's no knock on Jay-Z, because that's never been his bag per se. But if Pac had been alive, we would have seen that come to fruition. I mean, just in abundance. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know any other way to say it. I think he would have definitely led the charge there. What you got for number 9?
So I've been dealing with specifics the last couple ones, just
Mm-hmm.
using his words. But everyone loves this album, and I know it's your favorite one from him.
Mm-hmm.
But after Machiavelli, he was gonna make Me Against the World Part 2. You know, it was probably going to be titled Until the End of Time, and that is what came out posthumously. But I hated the production that they did to Pac's songs after Machiavelli when they did the posthumous ones. Because
Listen.
look, man, all the Eminem beats and this, like, dude, what of the 50 Cent features? No disrespect, but
Right,
it's
right,
like,
right.
dude, that's too. You don't need to put anything modern to Pac. And a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
don't know, but if you go look at Johnny J's original versions of Tupac's music, Pac's samples were very much so like Five Stair Steps, like very much so the Four Tops. It was very much
Mm-hmm.
so Marvin Gaye, very much so Stevie Wonder
Mm-hmm.
samples, because he grew up in a household with Afeni and Matulu where they were listening to that music because that was the music of what the organizers of the 60s were listening to. Earth, Wind, and Fire, all that stuff was, you know, amazing. So of course that was, you know, present in his music. You could look at it for Never Call You the B Word Again.
Mm-hmm.
You could that's who is that, Cameo or Total? It's like one of those two groups that was on that one. And it's just like all of his original versions have been kind of hidden, and they give us only All Eyes on Me. Is like that they want that to just be his legacy, and it's like, dog, he
Right.
has so much more. So Me Against the World would have been, I think, epic for the times, and I think that he probably would have made that into a series.
Man, listen, I'm with you 1,000% on that. I think I'm much like you. I'm not a fan, and I think I talked about it on that episode. I'm not a fan of the posthumous albums. I think the last I bought Machiavelli to Don. I bought the double CD
Are You
with
Still Down?
yeah. Are you still down?
That shit was good.
And oh yeah, it still bangs to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Q, I was done after that. I
Yeah.
I could not bring and I think at the time, um, there was a battle going on between Afeni Shakur, who was still alive at the time, and Suge Knight and Death Row as to where the money was going to be going. And I was like, look, there's no way that I'm going to buy a posthumous album if you can't tell me for sure that Afeni Shakur is not going to get money from this. If she wasn't going to get any money for it, I wasn't interested in buying it because at the time I wasn't sold on Suge anymore. Death Row had come apart. Snoop was gone. Dre was gone. And I'm like, I'm not about to contribute to Suge Knight and him hustling over a dead Tupac and a fully alive Afeni Shakur.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was, and to be honest with you, I don't even know if memory serves me correct. I don't know that. I know that they resolved it, but that alone was enough for me to say, you know what, I'm not buying any Tupac albums. And I remember albums would come out and people, man, you heard a new Pac, man, the Pac is going off. I'm like, nah, I can't do it. I was like, I can't do it. They wouldn't tell me where the money was going. I wasn't about to contribute to it. And I felt like Afeni Shakur gave us everything, and she lost her son in the process.
Mm-hmm.
And none of us, no matter how many accolades we give Tupac, that lady lost her son. Was that her only child?
No, she had a daughter as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she at the very least she gave up her only son.
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent, I don't ever want to know what that feels like. And to lose him so violently and so suddenly, is particularly where he was in life. No, I wasn't having it. So I stayed away from the posthumous albums. I would have loved to have seen where he was musically had he lived, because if he's away from death row and he's getting older, I think you have a different sounding Tupac. I think you have a Tupac who is, much like how we've seen, for better or for worse, how we've seen Hove. We would have watched Tupac get old and watch him become an elder statesman in hip hop. And who knows where that would have taken him? He could have been where Jay-Z is. He could have been where KRS-One is. I don't know, but I would have loved to have seen it happen. And that's a part of the sad part of him not being here. But I'm with you. I'm with you 1,000%. For the last one, what you got?
The last one is more all encompassing, but I think Tupac would have utilized technology like we've never seen before. I wouldn't be surprised if the man started tech company or something. I wouldn't be surprised if the man had multiple apps for artists or whatever. I wouldn't be surprised because the ideas that he was doing with even someone like quote unquote, I'm sorry, AKA Monster Cody,
Hmm.
Sanika Shakur, his ideas of you know Pac calling him, and you can actually listen to this phone call online if you type in Tupac Sanika Shakur phone call. They talk about, yo, let's get me, you, a bunch of rappers, let's go around the country and let's go regulate the drug dealers to give the blocks back to the kids between
Mm.
6 and 11 p.m. You know what I mean? Like, just let the kids have that time, and then y'all can have the streets back between 11 p.m. and like 6 p.m. You know what I mean? Like, just have it. Like, you know what I mean? We want to have a community again. We want to have like a program for our kids. We want to have like sports teams. You see Snoop take these ideas. All these
Hmm.
ideas have so in my opinion, can y'all imagine Tupac on Instagram Live? Like, dude, like that is insane. Like that is actually like what Tupac making a TikTok. Oh my
Hmm.
god, you know what I mean?
That's crazy. That is great. It's funny to think of it. Tupac on Twitter clapping back. Come
Oh,
on, man.
and Jay, another thing, Jay, about that shit you said, like, yo,
Let me ask you something, man. We both know Pac to be I'm not even gonna say political. He just spoke the truth. And I mean,
mm-hmm,
like, I'm very cautious about putting those type of labels on people
mm-hmm,
because sometimes you can put those labels on people
mm-hmm,
uh just because so that the other side can take it and run with it.
mm-hmm,
But as far as the politics, as Democrats, Republicans,
mm-hmm.
do you, if Pac were alive, could you see him being somewhere in the middle? Could you see him saying, "Hey, forget politics altogether"? Could you see him siding with Obama? Could you see him calling out
Mm,
the Clintons?
mm,
Uh,
mm-hmm,
I'm pretty sure Pac wouldn't have liked Trump.
mm,
Where do you think Pac would have stood in the political landscape that we've
mm-hmm,
seen over the last, let's say,
mm-hmm,
20 years?
mm-hmm. I think that's such an amazing question because the politics of Tupac Shakur, they have the ability to go multiple routes
Facts.
if he's left unabated, right?
Hmm.
If he's left to allow himself to create his record label, do his movies, he probably would have started his own film company, right? And what would this have done to his connection to community, right?
Hmm.
Would it have drove him closer to us, or would it have drove him further from us? Because money does change your psychology of how you
Facts.
view people.
Hmm.
But part of me feels as though the women that he had around him, the powerful Panther spirit of the women around him, it would have kept him grounded. I want to believe that truly in my heart, that
Okay.
it would have kept him grounded in a place where he would have been more of an independent. And I feel like even in that conversation with Sanyika, he speaks about this where he's like, look, we can register people for Democrats, Republicans, independent. It doesn't matter as long as we have a role of people within our community that we can look at and say, okay, this is power because we know where everyone's at and we can organize them. So if he's talking about, I think it was in the last interview. You can type it in on YouTube as well. It's called Tupac: The Last Interview,
Hmm.
where he's like, "I promise you, in 20 years, if God give me breath, I'm gonna be so far from this. We will have our own political party for all the lost tribes, the blacks,
Hmm.
Latinos, the Armenians, whoever it is. Everybody, we will have our own party." So if he's saying that, if he's stuck true to that, that is independence. And that is scary for the power structure because you have the ability to create your own capital, create your own money, your own cooperative economics, and you got the teachings of people who are connected to Matulu, Geronimo. It's a real issue that they had to deal with, and people don't want to deal with that. So that's one world.
Hmm.
There's also another possibility where, and this is where black folk, as African people, we have to be true to ourselves and true to what we have done and what we have not done. And oftentimes we do leave our leaders out there to dry.
Mm.
And then they do get bitter and they do say,
Facts.
fuck this, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
And they do say, you know what, I'm gonna just go take a bag with the Democrats. I'm gonna just
Hmm.
go. You know what, I tried. I'm gonna go give me a bag with the Republicans. Or you know what,
Hmm.
I'm done with all this. I'm only about my money. Y'all leave me alone. And I feel like Pac had been betrayed so much by people around him that it really would have been contingent on us that would we have protected him.
Mm-hmm.
Would we have surrounded him and say, no, this is our guy? Like he put on for us. We not gonna let y'all take him down again. We not gonna let y'all, you know what I'm saying, put him in jail again because this is our brother. But if we left him out to dry, like I believe we did Malcolm, and like I believe we did King.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at Dr. King's approval ratings within the Black community towards the end of his life, when he was going
Speak
against
on it.
Lyndon Johnson,
Speak
when
on it.
he was going against the Vietnam War, a lot of our professional class Negroes did not like him, and a lot of them turned their back on Dr. King. He was in the
Mm.
wilderness. And then when it was finally time for him to, go to the north and go to the west to advocate for free housing, to advocate for the actual subsidized foods and subsidized medicine for all of us, they got him up out of there, and all we could do was make him a holiday.
Mm-hmm. And we had a hard time doing that.
It took like 6 times.
Yeah, they fought us tooth and nail on getting that
Mm-hmm.
done.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you made some great points, man. I really would have loved to have seen that happen because I don't necessarily know. I know. I mean, we know how he felt about Bush.
Yeah.
He would have felt the same about his son. I think Pac would have called Clinton out.
Oh
He
yeah.
would have called Clinton on his shit. He would have created a process of thought for us as a people to say, no, you don't have to run to the Democratic Party. You don't have to run to the Republican Party because they ain't gonna take you. And if they take you, they're gonna take your money and just tell you to keep going. I think he would have supported Obama publicly and privately, but I think he also would have done a better job than we did collectively at holding Obama's feet to the fire for us. Now, granted, I've said this before on other podcasts, I'll say it again, I voted for him twice. I understand what he was facing, but I think in a lot of ways, it symbolized where we are and where we've been for the last 60, 80 years is that we'll vote somebody in and that's all we'll do. We don't hold their feet to the fire for the things that they promised that they would do. And not to get on the political tangent, Q, but that's been my struggle and my voice for the last 10, 15 years is that I think we have to do that. No, regardless of how you vote, if you so choose to vote. And the thing is, I think is that we've gotten to a point where people get so disenfranchised that they don't even want to vote because they're like, I'm not about to vote for the lesser of two evils. And then if I do that, I can't even hold this guy's feet or this woman's feet to the fire because they're not going to do what it is because they don't have my best interest at heart. But anyway, like I said, me and you, I start talking to you.
No, that's real. That's real. That's real.
We'll go real deep into politics.
That's
but
real.
I would have loved to have seen Pac create a political party or at least help establish the grassroots of it. And a lot of, I think, would be founded on the principles of the Panther Party that was established in the 50s and 60s for us as a people. And like you said, that type of movement, bruh, it's going to shake some people up because that type of movement, if you get enough people, and I don't think that a superstar like Tupac wouldn't have been able to get enough people, that type of movement shapes elections. It transcends what the political landscape looks like. And then maybe, just maybe, some of the things that we as a people have been asking for are now our demands are being met. Now money is flowing into our communities. Now our voices are being heard instead of just being taken advantage for the vote. They come and shake hands, just to get your vote or whatever like that, or pop up when it's election time.
And eat some KFC with you and shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on now.
And have some hot sauce in your purse.
Exactly.
But yeah, man, I thought of that question, just in thinking about you and thinking about the conversations we've had both on here and offline, just where he would be, man. It feels good to go back and I think this has been a great conversation as to where Pac, we think he would have been. And again, like I said before, it still stings a little bit because I'm 50. Pac would have been, I think, turning 51 this year, 52 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It still stings a little bit because
Cause
he
it's
should
the
have been beat.
homie, man. It's
Yeah.
the homie. Like yo, like how I know it's the feeling of I'm making memories, but my dog should be here to see this shit.
Right. Right.
Like, damn, what would my dog say if he saw this? You know what I mean? Like, man,
Mm-hmm.
I really wonder what he would say if he did this. You know, honorable mention to add into my top
Go
10.
ahead. Go ahead.
Death Row East,
Come on now.
Death Row East, Death Row East. Eric B for president for real.
Come
Because
on,
if
man.
you understand Pac what he was trying to do, I think Pac was trying to take over from Puff. He was trying to take Puff's whole territory because Pac was from
Mm-hmm.
New York.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to Bryant Park, went to SNL, and he was on the interviews talking about, I went to New York. I was good. They can't come out here. They have to get permission to come out here. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like the lines are drawn and people are uncomfortable and because I made it that way. And that's what and the fact that he's said that so loudly, but if you look at his strategy in the interview, in the last interview, he's like, dude, we got Melly Mel, we got Eric B, we got Christopher Williams, all the old 80s, 90s cats, and we gonna put them on Death Row East, and we gonna get all the young New York talents, Onyx, all them dudes is gonna sign up
Mm-hmm.
to us. That could have shifted everything.
Everything. And it makes you think, even for
Mm-hmm.
those who may be listening and say, well, I don't know if the government set him up. It makes you think, even to your point, Q, your personal opinion about him being
Mm-hmm.
framed. The one thing I do know, just to even piggyback on that, is
Mm-hmm.
that, and I said it before and I'll say it again, we do know for a fact on the nights that both Biggie and Pac were murdered, they
Mm-hmm.
were being trailed by the FBI.
Yes.
And the thing that makes all of this really sad is that we don't know who really killed Tupac. We
Mm-hmm.
don't really know who killed Biggie. And they could be walking in plain view
Mm-hmm.
as we speak. I mean, we think it might be Orlando Anderson, or at least that's what we've been told.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the time and the lack of technology and, the sheer nonchalant of a black man being killed on a crowded Vegas strip, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it they let a lot of stuff slide. I'll just put it like that.
Exactly. Kyle, they
But
got footage of JFK getting shot. They ain't got footage of Tupac getting shot. Like people need to stop playing with me, man.
Q,
Like,
not only do they have footage of JFK getting shot, we got different angles of him
yes,
getting
like
shot.
come on now. And then they don't have images of Tupac Shakur in Vegas.
In Vegas, of all places.
And no one ever questions how or they have just 3 seconds of Orlando Anderson just sitting right there. Just
Man,
that's the only footage we ever see in the lobby is
listen,
him standing right there. We don't have the image of Pac hitting him, and we have the jumping.
nothing. We have absolutely. What we were told was that the fight broke out, and then
Mm-hmm.
Orlando Anderson retaliated,
Mm-hmm.
and he came up on him on the strip, and
Mm-hmm.
shot it. I don't know. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if Tupac gets shot in 2022 or 2023 as opposed to 1996, it's a different story.
Yeah.
Now whether or not he lives or not, we don't know. But I mean, as far as like the surveil, I mean, there'd be surveillance cameras everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We would have answers, and unfortunately, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
But man, this has been dope, man. This has been a great exercise. Like I said, when I came up with the idea,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't think of anybody else that I would want to do it with besides this brother right here, because you guys know he's been on here before, man. But here's the thing, I'll let you guys in a little secret that some of you already know. He's only 26. he's a real person, but he's only 26, man. But I mean, a huge fan, and I mean, I knew I had to get Q on here. I told Q, I was like, we'll put this podcast out whenever. And what's funny is that this is coming out in January, and I recorded the episode with Manny in July. So that means I asked both Q and Manny in July of 2022 to do this podcast. And, it's just like, old school hip hop, you say, okay, we're going to go in and record, and we're going to do the record together. We just don't get around to doing the record, but eventually, the record gets done.
We're going to cut the record.
we going to cut it either way. So,
yeah.
But before we get out of here, Q, man, tell folks where they can hear you, where they can find you. Any information you want to put out, go ahead and do that right now.
Yes, sir. You can follow me on Instagram at q.tufluv. Q.TUFLUV, Tough Love. That's my hip hop, you know what I'm saying, moniker. Q is my, name that everybody knows me by. So it's always love. And I want to send a shout out to Kyle for bringing me on, my OG, always dropping game
always,
on
bro.
y'all. And I want to send a Happy New Year to Kyle and Happy New Year to the 12 Kyle listenership and everyone. And make sure that y'all have a safe time tonight. If this comes out, or if y'all still drinking in January, still drink responsibly. So
Yeah,
yeah,
do that for real. And same to you, man.
absolutely.
I told y'all before, that wouldn't be the last time he's on here. We definitely, and we're gonna get back on here and do something besides Tupac. But yeah, I had to get this young brother on here, man. You guys check him out. He surprised me. He's got music, but he's a huge hip hop head. And as you can tell, he knows his shit. It's funny, Q. I just thought about it. We did a show, back when the 12 radio show, about hip hop. And that had to be 2016. Yeah,
that was my freshman year of college. My freshman year of college, man.
Oh man, I gotta try to find that episode.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is on that episode we said, you know what, we got to do an episode on Machiavelli. and then that happened just 7 years after that.
Yeah, man. Well, better late than the thing is, when we say we're gonna do it, we're gonna do it.
Yeah, for sure.
And make sure you guys check Q out too. He's also in Dead End Sports.
Absolutely.
You pop in once every 2 or 3 weeks, right?
I try to get on every Thursday, but the way that this schedule's been going, it's been pretty spotty. But I think we had our last show about 2 weeks, and we're gonna start back up in January.
Man, I'm going to try. Going to try to get in on the Thursday show. You guys know I've been down with Dead End Sports, man. It seems like we've been running forever. It's damn near 10 years now. But I'm gonna try. And bruh, the next time you come to Atlanta, man, don't wait till you get to Atlanta to let people know you in Atlanta. Because I think when you came this summer, I was in Houston. And so I couldn't, when you came to the studio, I couldn't even, because you was like, yeah, I'm gonna pull up at the studio. I was like, man, shit, I'm in Houston.
man, Kyle was at Onyx, you know what I mean, getting it in, like, you know what I mean? I ain't know that.
Like, damn, man. I was like, because we have not physically met, but I mean, I've been running with this cat, man. It's been a nice run, man. But Q, my brother, appreciate you for coming through as always. Much love to you. Much prosperity in 2023 is gonna happen. And like I told you before the show, I'll tell you again, man. It's right there in front of you. Go get it.
Likewise.
Don't wait on nobody. Don't wait on no permission. Don't ask nobody. Whatever it is that you want to get, go get it. Because it's there, and you're at that age where you got the time, you got the skill, and you got the knowledge.
Yes, sir.
That trumps everything. You got the knowledge to go get it. And I say the same to all of you listeners. Make sure that 2023 is, you stay healthy. Don't feed into BS. And just live life. Enjoy each day, because none of us promised us, and love on yourself and love your family. But that's going to do it for us. So for my man Q, I am your boy 12 Kyle. This is another edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.